Hey, Browns fans, Spencer German with you live from Berea, where the Browns wrapped up practice here on Friday and wrapped up the week of practice as they get ready for a matchup with New Orleans Saints on Sunday to start the second half, the back half of their 2024 schedule. A lot of different things to talk about here today. Been a relatively quiet week, I would say, on most fronts with this team. Not a lot of breaking news, big stories. There is an injury note that we will get to. But obviously, the big topic of conversation throughout this entire week is just Jameis Winston and his return to New Orleans, where he spent the last 4 seasons before coming to Cleveland. He said a ton of different things this week just about the lessons learned playing under Sean Payton and Drew Brees and kind of what that meant to him. And he's spoken very fondly of his time there and the memories that he made, and obviously the experiences that he had specifically working under those two NFL legends, Sean Payton, who's now coaching the Broncos, and Drew Brees, who's a bona fide Hall of Fame quarterback at some point here down the line. That's been a major storyline and something that I think everyone is anticipating and looking forward to seeing how he performs on a stage of that scale where he gets a chance to go back to a place that he used to call home and put on a show against a team that he knows pretty well. It'll be interesting to see. I think obviously Jameis has brought a jolt to the offense a couple weeks back when he took over for Deshaun Watson after the season-ending injury. And then sort of you got the full Jameis Winston experience, I think, 1 week later in that Chargers game where he goes from throwing 3 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. If you can just get a middle-of-the-road game from him where he limits the mistakes and he leads this offense effectively and efficiently and sees things well, I think the Browns have a shot in this game to play at a pretty high level and potentially come out of there with a win and get their third win of the season. What that means for the big picture of the season remains to be seen. I think at this point, playoffs are obviously a long shot, but they get one and maybe they start to build some momentum here. They got a bunch of division games to go, and they can at least make the end of the schedule seem at least more meaningful in the sense that maybe they end up in the hunt graphic come December. But as far as Jameis is concerned, yeah, I think limiting the mistakes is going to be one of the biggest things on his radar in this one. And you're also going up against the Saints defense. That's one of the worst in football in terms of rushing yards allowed per game. They're pretty porous in that way. And the Browns have an opportunity here to get that run game going. That's been a point of emphasis. Kevin Stefanski talked about that throughout the week, how they really studied, what wasn't working for them or what was working for them in the run game, how they can be more effective in the run game moving forward. And so it does feel like that's going to be a point of emphasis for them in this game, but also moving forward. And maybe some of that, or a lot of that, revolves around Nick Chubb and his ability to continue to build momentum. It seemed like 2 weeks back, he was really close to breaking some of those classic Nick Chubb runs. He hasn't looked quite like the same player he used to be, but every now and then he had that little burst, and then maybe a week off, the bye week kind of helped him get a little bit closer to looking like that player, being that player, even if he never gets back to it, being at least closer to who he used to be. And if the Browns can get him running effectively, that can be a very, very useful tool in a game and matchup against this Saints team. As far as the injuries are concerned, Browns off of the bye week, I mean, this is about as healthy as I've seen this team since probably starting the season. And even you might even have to go back farther because even starting the season, you knew there was a number of guys who started the season with injuries. I mentioned Nick Chubb. He was on the PUP list. You had both your tackles and Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills still coming back from their knee injuries. So there was an assortment of guys injured even at that point. But this is the healthiest I've seen the Browns in maybe over a year. Like the injuries are not there for them right now, which is a good thing. Guys had a chance to get off their feet, get well rested, get healed up leading into this Week 11 matchup. The only thing of concern is one that popped up during the week of practice, and it always feels like these injuries that pop up during the week of practice. The same can be said, I think, last year. Anthony Walker, former Browns linebacker, he had an injury pop up during the week of practice that ended up being season-ending. It seems like these are always the more detrimental ones for some reason. I think DeJuan Jones maybe had the same thing last year with his season-ending knee injury. And this week, it was Mike Hall Jr., the second-round pick back in April, who suffered a knee injury. Kevin Stefanski elaborated today on Friday that it was something he sustained during a drill that they were doing. And he made it clear that he does expect him to be out for a period of time. How long that period of time is remains to be seen. He was asked specifically, point blank, if it was an injury that was going to require surgery. And he said he was not ready to go there just yet at this point in terms of what the future outlook of that ailment could be, and the severity of it. But for now, Mike Hall is ruled out for the Saints game. Sounds like he's going to be ruled out for several games after that at the very least, and maybe there's an IR stint in his future, in terms of Saturday when they have to make their final roster moves and get this thing set for Sunday's kickoff on Sunday. So we'll see if anything comes to fruition there. But Mike Hall, the only player at this point popping up on the injury report as out. And so again, the positive side of this is that the Browns are going into this matchup as healthy as they've been all season. On the flip side, you lose a rookie player that the Browns likely were hoping to evaluate down the stretch of the season and the rest of the way. And he was a guy, Mike Hall Jr., that Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator, mentioned on Thursday was a potential option to fill in, at least in some capacity, with Za'Darius Smith being traded at the deadline a little over a week ago. It sounds like that's going to be a multifaceted role, sort of multiple players involved. Obo Okoronkwo and Isaiah McGuire are sort of the lead dogs in that conversation. But he mentioned, Schwartz did, that Hall could bump outside and play that spot, as well as Sam Kamara, who's a practice squad guy and could get promoted on Saturday as part of the roster finalization as well. So we'll see what all that looks like. But obviously losing Mike Hall, not something the Browns are hoping for. Relatively, though, the Browns are healthy as they head to New Orleans on Saturday. We also had our chance, as always, on Friday to talk to Myles Garrett. It's usually his availability on Fridays. And he had a few things to say. I mentioned the Za'Darius Smith trade. We'll start there because I thought he had some interesting comments in regards to the Za'Darius getting traded, and maybe more specifically, felt like he took at least a little bit of a shot at him. Here's what he had to say.
First, I like to say I've never seen a man smile so much going to a new place. My man was cheesing from ear to ear when he was on TV. But happy to see him feeling good, feeling like himself, and being positive. As far as the guys we have here, a lot of confidence. Zay's been studying behind us, Obo, and watching us and developing on his own and coming into his own. So we're glad to see him out there and then getting those chances to develop into the player we know he can. And Obo's, he's been consistent since he's been a threat. He's been that six man really off the bench, and now he's really going to get an opportunity to show what he can really do on a more consistent.
So as you heard there, Garrett exuding some confidence in his teammates who will be filling in for Za'Darius Smith and Isaiah McGuire and Obo Okoronkwo. We'll see what that rotation sort of looks like. Obo today was asked specifically, like, hey, you're kind of starting for this team, and it kind of caught him off guard. So I don't know if they've named anybody specifically the starter at that spot, but it will be sort of a by committee rotation of players, which is part of it's part of the staple of, or it's a staple of Jim Schwartz defense anyway. They like to rotate guys. We know that. But obviously without Za'Darius Smith, some big shoes to fill because he's been arguably the best sidekick to Myles Garrett since he got here, since the Browns sort of started doing this run a pass rusher program where they would sign a guy in the offseason to pair with him or trade for a guy like they did with Za'Darius the first time around last year. But I did think it was interesting that Myles, after saying he was pretty confident Za'Darius Smith was going to be here, or at least alluding to the idea that he was going to be here after the deadline, sort of had a parting shot at his former teammate and saying he seemed like he was pretty darn happy to get himself out of Cleveland and was smiling from ear to ear, being able to play for the Lions. And I think there's a couple things in play there. We sort of talked to Obo Okoronkwo about this, but like the idea that maybe there was some relief for Za'Darius after spending several weeks being part of this trade rumor mill, just being able to now kind of know where you're at, what your situation is, where you're going, has to feel freeing in some capacity. But also, we know that Lions team, unlike the Browns right now at 2-7, that Lions team's going places. They have a shot actually to win a Super Bowl, and I'm sure that would re-energize anybody sort of going over there. I don't know that it was actually Za'Darius speaking to or alluding to his unhappiness in Cleveland. We know from all accounts he liked it here. He liked his teammates, and him and Myles made a pretty darn good dynamic duo as pass rushers on this Browns defense. So I think he enjoyed his experience here overall. Let's get you another Myles Garrett clip. We know he's been dealing with a lot of injuries this year, most notably earlier this season. He talked about following up the bye week, where he's at, how he feels on a scale of 1 to 10 from early in the season to now, and explained what he thinks might actually lie ahead in terms of the lingering effects of these injuries in the off season.
If you could put a number on it, how much healthier are you now than you were, say, late September?
Ooh, man, I said like 6 to like an 8.
So 6. How tough was it?
It wasn't a consistent 6. Like it was up and down, but it was definitely tough just because it was so inconsistent. From play to play, day to day, we're dealing with something or another. So, got him hopefully healed for the most part, and he can start to play some good football.
You're still playing well, but it's
Absolutely. I want to make plays for my team. I want to win games. And I know that if I'm going out there and I'm feeling just good, if I'm feeling at least like myself, I can go out there and be a game changer for the rest of the team. So I'm going to get back to that. So those 4 games, as disruptive as it was, and making TFLs, I want to get the ball out, I want to get those strip sacks and just step them back. A bit of both. Things are getting better, but still something to address in the off season. So I'm not looking too far into the future with all that. We got a game coming here soon, but that is further down the road.
bye week, kind of getting off your feet for a little bit, aid with that process a little bit more.
Definitely, taking time off, using it for recovery, and just being away for a little bit. It definitely helps a little bit.
So you heard that answer towards the end there where he said bit of both. That was just kind of it was essentially a question about whether or not he's healed up a little bit with specifically the foot injuries, the feet injuries that he was dealing with. And if he still envisions that being something that he's going to have to look at or get looked at this offseason, because he's been very candid about those injuries specifically at the start of the year and how it's maybe stemmed from some surgery that he had when he was a kid, when he was younger, and was sort of the lingering effects of that now in his adult life and in his professional football life. And to hear him talk about, as you heard in that clip, like he feels healthy, he feels better. He's an 8 versus a 6 now. I thought it was interesting to sort of follow up with the idea of like, are these injuries healing, or is it still something you think is going to be worth addressing later this offseason? And clearly, as you heard there, it is still something that is on the table to be addressed this offseason. That might mean surgery, that might mean something else, but not something he's paying attention to right now. His focus is solely on the Saints. And the best news of all, of course, is that he feels healthy enough to go out there and contribute to this team. And he looks like he's playing at the level we're used to seeing Myles Garrett play, coming off of that 3-sack performance where he had 3 sacks in 4 plays nonetheless against the Chargers 2 weeks ago. And that's the best news of all. Keeping him healthy and not risking any further injuries is an important part of the rest of the season for him. But as long as he's comfortable going out there and he knows it's not going to bother him any further, I think he's all squared to keep playing. And obviously, he is planning on crossing that bridge when he comes to it, in terms of what awaits him this offseason in the form of potential surgeries or recoveries or whatever might be in store. So that's going to do it from Berea. I'm Spencer German. I do want to remind you all to like, follow, subscribe to the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel, where many of you might be watching this right now. You can also be sure to check out all of our written articles and stories over at Cleveland Browns on SI, or si.com/NFL/Browns. There's been a bunch of stuff from today, the injury report going into Sunday's game, which includes a little blurb on Jordan Hicks making his first start in several games. He's missed 4 of the last 5 games with an assortment of injuries that he elaborated on this week, talking about how serious they were, and how everyone didn't know the full picture of what he was dealing with injury-wise. And obviously the Mike Hall news is in there. Also a piece on Myles Garrett with what we just kind of talked about in regards to his how he feels health-wise and what kind of awaits him this offseason, among a number of other an assortment of other articles that you can check out there. So please be sure to do that too. Again, Spencer German with you from Berea, signing off on this Friday. Next time you see me, we'll be getting you ready pregame from New Orleans. We will be on the scene in New Orleans for the Browns and the Saints at 1 o'clock this coming Sunday. Until then, enjoy the weekend and keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns, with the Cleveland Browns on SI.